Good day, folks. Welcome to Week 4 Organizational Behavior, Summer 2021. What should you be working on this week? Well, the quiz will be due by June 14th. I hope to have it available to you on Sunday morning so that you can take it anytime between Sunday morning when I make it available and 11:59 p.m. on June 14th. More about that in a moment. The next reflection is due June 20th. And the real-time virtual team experience. This means we're going to be all together virtually in Zoom with Alan Witt from the library, and we're going to do a activity. We'll see how it goes. It's on June 21st at 7 p.m. More to come on that. If you're not going to be able to make it, we'll find an alternative thing for you to do. But please let me know. When we get into Myers-Briggs, it's important to see that these are preferences. These are not absolutes. Very few people score 100% in one category or another. We're all mixed, but it's not absolute. It's a tool that you can use, I can use to improve my own performance, and a tool for you as a manager to maximize your group's performance. It's actionable, and it's a very important one to understand why people do things. Oftentimes we say, why did you do this? Well, because these are our preferences. This is how we look at things. So let's just go through them again. The first letter is, again, energy. Where do we get our energy? People and things, or more of an inner world of ideas and images? There's no right or wrong answer, okay? That we are who we are, and these preferences are important to see. Second letter, how do we take in information? Sensing, gathered from the five senses, like things methodical, boom, boom, boom. Intuitives, gather information from patterns and meanings. When we make decisions, do we prefer decisions based on facts and principles, or do we bring in more human concerns and feelings? Again, neither right or wrong. An approach to the world, judging, prefer structure and order, closure, and perceiving, prefer flexibility and adaptability. So if we're looking these as preferences and we adapt to different situations based on them, but if we really want to, as a manager, if I want to be effective, and I know what your preferences are, I can try to have more assignments that work with your preferences, and I can coach you and help you do that. Now, I will tell you, you are as a group, one of the most unique groups that I've ever had in OB. And where you focus your attention, this class would have been, I could only imagine it being in person based on Myers-Briggs. 74% are E's. 26% are I's. Some of those of you that are strong I's, you wouldn't get a word in edgewise. It might be an uncomfortable situation for you. But this is unusual, okay? We look at differences in our behavior sometimes come from how different letters of these two letters come together. Sensing and judging, sensing and perception. Intuitive feeling, intuitive thinking. Now, what you see here is the majority, again, this is consistent with some of this, we're intuitors, patterns. And those of you that are SJs or SPs or SF, again, this is very unusual, so that the discussion could go off on a very intuitive way, where those of you that are sensitive say, wait a minute, doesn't it need to go from here to here to here? So you'd be the ones that would be pulling us back to facts. The other thing is I thought I would take a look at how this breaks down. And again, where we normally have ISTJs, if I did my math right, we don't have any. We don't have any ISTPs. And again, when we look at the I's, you're a very small group of people here. But take a look at ENFPs, population 8%. We're 13. ENFJs, 17%. So as much as individuals, we know, just as a mix of people in a class, We're an interesting group of people. I think our presentations would be in person, could go on quite a bit longer. But they're good discussions, and if you've been to any of our current events discussions, you can see that happening. So, good job. I was really impressed by everybody, got to know people, and I feel like I know you fairly well. Good job, and we'll see how Monday night goes. The quiz is scheduled for June 14th, 2021, which is Monday. The quiz needs to be started by 11:59 p.m. on June 14th, 2021. I hope to have the quiz available for you to start early on Sunday morning, if not later today. Once you start, you need to finish. I would allow yourself at least 2 to 3 hours to complete the quiz. It's going to cover modules 1 and 2. It's going to be a mix of multiple choice, true, false, and some short answers. I would suggest for the short answers that you prepare your responses in Word and then paste into Canvas. That is generally a lot easier, and then in case something happens, you already know what your answer was. Depth and specificity are key. Avoid generalities and platitudes. Keep in mind the points that each question has. So if it's a 5-point question, a 5-word answer doesn't cut it. Okay? So be in depth. Come back. Say, mean, matter. This quiz is worth 18 points or 18% of your grade. So it's a significant piece. So make sure you think, give yourself time. Next thing is our current events presentation. Everyone should have an article now, and you should have your discussion presentations pretty much ready to go. It's worth 10% of your grade, and we need to complete this by the 24th of June, so it gives us time to get everything done and graded in by the end of the semester. If I have not yet scheduled, you have not scheduled or done it, let me know any times between 7 and 9 a.m. Monday through Sunday, and we can get these done. So just reach out to me. Again, say, mean, matter. Summary. What's the interpretation? What are the implications that matter? When you're thinking of your quiz, this is what we're looking at. This, not so much this. Okay. You also need to engage in 3 real-time discussions with others. I'm going to post the times and Zoom invites of all presentations. You need to be present and participate in the discussion. Okay, it's worth 6 points, 6% of your grade. And again, we need to have that completed by June 24th. And this is all laid out so that we can get everything done. The timeline for me to submit grades is very, very tight. This week so far, there are 7 scheduled. And what I've done is identified those that are OB or finance. You're welcome to attend the OB ones because I think you're going to see a lot of connections between them. But from this week, we got Ben and Rebecca to discuss how Microsoft's Chief Accessibility Officer does her job. Central banks jumping into climate change fray. Meat prices rise. Good moods. ESG bonds. Requiring vaccines in the workforce, an interesting topic. And then rising wages. And you click here to join the event. So that's the key thing. Just to share, we had a couple of presentations last week, and one of them was about taking breaks. I've actually posted that one in Canvas for you to look at. But I think there's a difference culturally. And here's just a little thing. European out of office message. I'm away camping for the summer. Please email back in September. Where the American out of office is, I've left the office for 2 hours to undergo kidney surgery, but you can reach me on my cell anytime. We have that hard part as Americans of breaking away, of taking a break. And that has been complicated by COVID. So go ahead and take a look at that discussion that we had. It was actually pretty good. What I want to do now is talk about some of the things that are happening on a very general sense that I think is important for us to understand what's going on because of the implications on how a company is managed, which has the impact on its financial affairs. This is an interesting one, is that remote work could double permanently. Okay. And this was pre-COVID. 78.8% of firms surveyed said they don't see remote work in the future. But look at what's happened between them. Fully remote went from 12 to 22, partial went 8.9 to 14.6. So this has implications from the finance perspective. There's the cost, okay? There's the data security of doing that. There is, how do you manage a remote or partially remote workforce? So these are behavioral issues that have to be addressed. What a company does, how do they implement and build strategy? So that's sort of the key thing, that this is a fundamental change that will impact companies. And I think it'll be interesting to watch, but keep that in mind as we move forward. We also had the Consumer Price Index came out a day or so ago, and what we've seen is that on a year-on-year, we've seen an increase of 5% in cost, the CPI overall. Now, when we go back and look at it, we can see it wasn't as high as it was back in 2008, but it dropped way back down. But we're looking at 5%. Now, that's a pretty big increase. The Fed's goal is 2%, but they're letting the economy run at 5%. Some people say it's transitory, meaning that all the stimulus that went in is causing this to happen and will revert to a more normal rate. Now, I think we got to look at this within the context of who's impacted most by a 5% increase. And it's generally those of low to mid income, because they spend more of the money they earn. So if you make $50,000, you're going to spend just about all of it. You're not going to save that much. But if you make $250,000, your savings rate is much higher. So, and you have more funds to draw from than does somebody at 50. Now, let's look at this 5%. I think it's important to look at this within the context of history. And this goes back to 1915, well over 100 years. And what you can see is that we've really been in a fairly stable range, if you will, going here probably from 1990 on. We've seen ups and downs. This was, last time it was 5, just the Great Recession. And then as we entered into the recession, it dropped. Same thing here as the economy slowed, and this was COVID, and now we're recovering from that. But if you go back and you see, we've had times back in 1979 where we had 15% inflation. We were getting 10% raises back then. That sounded like an awful lot of, whoa, things were going real crazy. But this is when you see the history right after, in the 20s, the roaring 20s, we were looking at 24% inflation. So this is, whenever they see these bars, right, this is recession. So what you have tended to see is in a recession, we drop off and we have deflation and not inflation. And the question then becomes, what drives what? Does the level of inflation get so high that it has to drop back down? And that's what we've seen here. We've seen it here, 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 especially here. So this is just to keep it within the historical context. So it's pretty stable, and what everybody will be looking for is that. So that's inflation. So we talked about the change due to COVID and remote work. We talked about inflation. Let's now go back and look at people. And since 2010, the raw number of the population between 25 and 54 years old has remained the same. But if we go back to 1970, it was growing every year, which means that there was a market for jobs. So this age cohort remained about the same. Okay, there's no growth, and this is your prime workforce. So it's hard to grow an economy when you don't have the volume of workers. And if you look, the change in labor force participation rate for people 25 to 54 since January 20, you can see that more women left the workforce and men left the workforce. But we're looking at this goes from the start of the pandemic. At the low, it was down 3.5, but it was still down a lot of people. So if we're down a lot of people, and this number is flat in total, and the participation rate goes down, that means there's less workers available. And I thought I'd throw this in just for fun, and I don't think it's any surprise, is that if you take people and you break them into high wage, middle wage, low wage, what you find is if 100 is January of 19, and we see we're going along there, everybody's pretty much holding their own, and here's COVID. But those in the low income have dropped off much more so than those in middle wage and high wage earners at 98%. So the job growth is really happening more for those that are in the high wage group. The good news is the job openings in the country right now, at just about 9,286 open jobs. The survey said that there was going to be 8,002, so that's a surprise. But take a look at how many openings they are. There's a lot of job openings. But when you see that population, 24 to 54, prime working age is staying the same, there's not going to be enough. And that's what's leading to the inflation. Okay? So I went through this just to give you a sense of some of the key things that have happened in the past week that really stand out from whether this is finance or OB. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out. And I look forward to our discussions this week, so have a great week.